Motherhood can open your heart wider than you ever thought possible, yet at times it can also leave you feeling like utterly drained and exhausted. If you found yourself running on empty, as most of us have, these heart-opening practices for mums can help you reconnect with your inner calm, compassion and joy. So as part of Wild Rose Path, a lot of the ritual side of things that we cover in some of the other blog posts as well, we talk a lot about heart-opening practices and heart coherence. That's a big part of this work, and it's something that I tend to do myself on a daily basis. In this post, however, I'm wanting to focus on mums who are probably in the early stages of motherhood. So maybe, you've just had a baby, you're postpartum, or you've got young children. So for me, doing this daily practice of heart opening is a fairly recent thing. I've got a little bit kind of further down the lane now, if you will, and my children are a little bit older now, so I've got 3 children and the youngest one has just started reception class at school. So there's a bit, like I'm stepping back a bit more now in the motherhood role. It's not as full on as it was a couple of years back. So I do have the privilege of having a bit more time and space to do some of these practices. But I remember how it was for me as a mum with young children, particularly when my girls were young, because there was only 13 months between them and it was full on. There was barely any time to myself. So what I wanted to discuss today was heart-opening practices, but not in terms of, having the luxury or the privilege of being able to go out to classes of like cacao ceremonies and sit there for hours and work on heart work and breath work and all this and just have all that time, which as a new mum you just don't have. And also you don't have the energy either, let's face it. You're absolutely exhausted most of the time. So I don't think you have to wait, and I wish I'd known about some of these rituals a few years ago when I was a mum of very young children. It's just about kind of making it accessible to where you are at now. So we're going to look at a few rituals that as a tired mum with hardly any time and not much energy are going to be achievable for you to do. So why do we need heart-opening practices anyway? Why is this something we need to do? And to me, there are many reasons, and I could probably write a whole blog post about them. There are so many, from like spiritual reasons through to the physical reasons. One of the big reasons, I think, is because it's such an important and integral part of our own journey of self-healing. And again, as a new mum, we're all on this kind of healing journey together, and I think as a new mum that maybe gets put to the back a little bit, just because of like time and energy restraints. When you've got young children, you're really in that kind of survival mode, and looking after the kids comes first. We always, as mothers, we kind of put ourselves to the back of the pile, so to speak, because we're focused on meeting our children's needs, which is certainly, the way that we are wired to go about things. But it's also the reason why we kind of need these heart-opening practices more than ever at this point in our lives. We are in a role where we are being required to give so much, and as I say, now my kids are a bit older, I can kind of step back a little bit and look back and how much of myself I had to give at that point in my life as a mum of like babies and young children, how much I had to give and how much it really, really depleted me. And so some of the reasons why mums who are exhausted could really benefit from heart opening practices is because as we open the heart center, we're creating that energetic connection with people around us, particularly people who are, physically in our space, and that radiates out. So the HeartMath Institute are the ones who have done so much work in this field of heart coherence, not only giving us practices that we can use in everyday life, but also into the science of it as well. So again, if you've watched any of my videos or read any of my posts, you'll know I'm like nerding out on mixing science and spirituality. And they found that the heart's electromagnetic field can be detected up to about 3 feet, that's about 1 metre, outside of the body. So if you think that's the size of your electromagnetic field coming out of your heart, and obviously when we've got babies and young children, they are very close to us for such long periods of time, most of the day, they're really in that energy field that you're emitting. So that alone is kind of a reason to say, well, if I'm working on opening my heart and heart coherence and really making that electromagnetic field vibrate at a frequency that kind of benefits me in terms of healing, it will also benefit anyone who's in that field or connected to that field. So yeah, there's that kind of healing benefit from mother for mother and child, and from mother to child. And yeah, that connection, that relationship as we're opening our hearts, learning to sort of take down those walls that we've all put up over the years for past emotional hurts and traumas. But opening the heart helps us then connect and build that relationship with our children. And to me now, where we're in this world of, like, obviously as kids growing older, I'm seeing it with my own, they're getting more influence from their peers and from society and from culture. And there's the whole discussion on mobile phones, that's a big one at the moment. And it's just like, if you're cultivating that kind of root relationship from the beginning with your children, you're setting them up with a really strong connection, then you could look at that almost like as their like baseline. So as they grow up into the world and start to move away from you and all this other stuff does come in, at least they've got that strong connection that's rooted and grounded them to start, so that hopefully from that they can step out into the world and make their own decisions in a really kind of grounded way and make the right decisions for them. And HeartMath have said it themselves, when individuals are in this state of like heart coherence. So that's when we've kind of, done these rituals, worked on opening the heart centre up, and we've got this coherence going then between the heart and the brain. A lot of us now kind of live in our heads so much in this society. We are trained to, we are conditioned to. All our kind of consciousness and awareness is up in our heads. And whilst that can be useful in some situations, in many other situations, it's limiting us, it is holding us back, and we need to work on being aware of both of those centres, heart and brain, and kind of getting them to work together for our own benefit and really opening up new ways of being in the world from that. Anyway, so when individuals are in this state of heart coherence, the electromagnetic field is more harmonious, and that can be perceived not just as was said by like others in that field, but it can also influence like the emotional atmosphere of a room. So you might have been, in a room with somebody who's just got that kind of, people say you've got that kind of aura about them. They can kind of shift the energy in the room somehow. Sometimes that can be in a positive way, in an uplifting way, and sometimes that can be in a really sort of negative and draining way. It could be either or. And you can see in, people like Tony Robbins, how many people follow him, he's got that kind of state of heart coherence where he's really influencing the emotional atmosphere of that room. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of this. What can we actually do? What rituals or practical things can we actually do to start opening our heart centres? Bearing in mind, we can't be sitting in meditation for half the day. We've still got little people who need us. So I'm going to talk about a few different things, but what I wanted to say as like a caveat before I start talking about them is that some things may require you to get something, like get an object or buy an object. And I don't want anyone to feel like this is a list of things where you have to go and buy A, B, and C, because then we're going back into this whole capitalist mindset. And there's so much kind of self-care tips nowadays, and they are so centered around, buying this, that, and the other. Having a bath and you've got to buy all these different things, different products to use in your bath and use on. And yeah, we just don't need to go down that rabbit hole. So, if you have these things to hand, great. If you don't, there are always different workarounds. Don't have to feel that you have to go out and buy stuff or consume more things just to do this, because you don't. Okay, so I've got my coffee here. I'm going to have a brew with you and we're going to talk about a few different heart rituals. The first one, if you go on the HeartMath website, you Google HeartMath, you can find so much information on how to get started with this as a practice there. I will link to that in the blog post. There is so much information, especially if you're new to all this and you're like, okay, this sounds good, but I'm not quite sure what's going on. You can learn a little bit more about like the science as well as heart opening. The science of it, there's plenty of that on the HeartMath website, and how the emotional energy shifts, how it works. So if you like me and you like to know how these things work, then do check out that as probably the number one resource in this kind of thing. But we're just going to look at the main kind of first primary ritual for heart opening, which you can find on the HeartMath website, and also I tend to do in a lot of my practices. So if you've downloaded the Tender Heart ebook and accompanying video, we went through this ritual in that video, and I think I've done it in quite a few different things now. I do it in my Wild Rose reconnection meditation as well, which is on the website. It's part of that, so it's an integral part of Wild Rose Path essentially, because so much of Wild Rose Path is about opening the heart. So all you need to do for this, really, in a nutshell, is breathe into your heart centre. Just that first step of having awareness of your heart centre, just if you can, obviously time is a restraint, so if you can find even a couple of minutes just to yourself, even if you have to go and sit on the loo, but just to have that awareness in your heart centre, in that physical space of your heart centre, and it can really help to just put a hand over that area and just focusing on breathing in and out of that place, just in and out of that heart centre. Just something that simple. If you're able to, in that situation, to close your eyes and just go in within, even just for a few seconds, just to reset, and just breathing in and out of that heart centre. If you find you have a few more minutes and you can take it a little bit longer, maybe your kids have gone for a nap, then you can start doing things like visualising a light, maybe a sort of pink or a golden light emanating from your heart centre, and feeling the energy that exists in that place. But that, as a basic practice done every day, is something, because we are so caught up now as well in what can we do. We want to we want to go on a healing journey, and we want to have self-growth, and we're very caught up on what can we do, what action steps do we need to take. Sometimes not so many or none, especially when we are in that season of young children, of looking after babies. So this ritual alone can be really beneficial for you and your children. Say you've got a little bit longer though, like we said, maybe you've got kids having nap time. Say you've got a little bit longer and you want to go a little bit deeper. You can do that practice, and as you breathe into that heart centre, you bring to mind either a person or a place or something that's happened to you that makes you feel that strong feeling of like gratitude or love. I know a lot of us can sometimes struggle with gratitude practices, but something that sparks either love, joy, or some kind of real deep gratitude. So as an example for me, I often think of when my son was born, because that was a home birth and it was a very powerful moment for me. And yeah, after it I felt like an absolute rock star. So I often tap into that energy of feeling like that for this practice. So it might be to do your children, or it might be another situation or a place where you go where you just feel just like you belong there. But those really deep feelings, if you can anchor those in as you breathe into your heart centre, keep visualising that situation that's bringing them strong feelings, even just for 30 seconds, a minute, and then become aware of where that feeling is in your body. If it's in your heart centre, it might be somewhere else in your body. You might feel a tingling or a warmth, but just becoming aware of what the feeling is in your physical body from that. And after, say, like a minute of visualising, or 30 seconds, whatever, you can kind of begin to drop the visualisation from your mind. And that's when we come out of the mind, let the visuals go from the brain, and really drop into that feeling. Love, joy, gratitude, but really dropping into the body and into that physical feeling that you're getting from it. And then just breathing for a couple of minutes, like however long you've got with that, before kind of coming back into the room and grounding yourself, feeling the floor under your feet, doing whatever it is you then need to ground yourself and get on with your day. And what I love about this ritual is it's so seemingly so basic. You know, you don't need any tools for it. You can do it if you have a couple of minutes. You might be able to do it while you're boiling the kettle or something. But at some level, in some layer of this ritual, it is accessible to everybody. As I say, if you have more time and you have more space, you can go deeper with it. So that could be your opening ritual to like a 10-minute meditation. So, once you've dropped into that, you just go into meditation for 10 minutes and, see if anything comes up. Keep your hand over your heart maybe and see if anything comes up, any emotions, any kind of thoughts that pop in. Listening without judgment. If you've got even more time, you might add to that by saying, right, I'll finish the meditation and then I'll do a little bit of journaling about anything that came up, or any feelings that came up, anything that felt a bit, I felt resistance there. You can make it your own practice every day. And I think letting go as well as of that expectation that it has to look a certain way every day. Sometimes we will have 15 minutes to do all the extended version of this ritual, and you may have chance then to bring in some crystals like rose quartz, for example. You might have chance to bring some of that in and hold that to your heart whilst you're doing this. Some days you'll probably only have like a minute, or you'll forget because there's so much other stuff going on, and that's okay. Even if you remember and just do it for like 30 seconds, that's something. You're in this season of life where you don't have all the time and energy in the world because you are giving so much. So yeah, as I've mentioned crystals there's some other ways to add to this ritual to make it into a bit more of a ritual, a little bit more longer and elaborate if you've got more time and energy. It can be really nice to do something a little bit more, official, if you will. And I kind of do this around new and full moons, I do, that's when I sort of do a bit more of a official kind of rituals, whereas sort of day to day there's so much going on. It's more kind of connecting with the plants for me, like when I'm walking on the school run or something. So if you've got a bit more time, there's the crystals, rose quartz, clear quartz, tiger's eye for courage, whatever you feel drawn to. There's no right or wrongs. You can light candles, and use that as a visual anchor. And you might have time for some movement, if you've got time for some yoga practice, there are some fantastic moves there where you can, gently work on not just opening the heart center, but kind of helping your body to gently shift, what it doesn't need to hold on to anymore. Some people find affirmations really useful as well. There can be, I've had this myself with affirmations where it's like, I find it really difficult, especially the ones where you are sort of saying something and you're not physically in that reality yet, you've not embodied that yet, and you can feel so strange. But if there's one thing I've learned, that often the things where I feel the strangest and the daftest, if I actually continue to do them, that's where I can find real change. So try and find some affirmations that work for you, and maybe one or two that do feel a little bit, that's not quite me, because that's where we're maybe just pushing that growth edge a little bit. Again, you don't need to worry about doing that too much at this time of this season of your life, pushing growth edges, because your kids will do enough of that for you. So we've talked a little bit about why we would want to open the heart, why that practice would be beneficial to both us and our children and those around us. And we've talked a little bit about the kind of basic ritual that we can come back to and some ways to make that a little bit more our own or tweak it in some way. So as you go along with this practice, you may find that in time, there's a bit more joy and balance kind of comes back into your life. And I know that often disappears with young children because it is so hard. The amount of people that would say to me, enjoy this phase while it lasts. It doesn't last long. It's like, yeah, I get that, and I still do. And I still see that. But at the time when you are in it, when you are kind of in the trenches, so to speak, it is often very hard to enjoy that, and then you get that expectation that you should be enjoying it foisted on you by other people, and you can't. Some points of it, you will enjoy, and some parts of it you won't. It will be really hard, and you'll just be thinking, I cannot wait until this phase is over. You are allowed to feel like that. It is normal to feel like that. And so many times when we're doing something small like this, just little bits of something every day, again, we're in this kind of culture where we are really sort of taught to conditioned to look for results very quickly. So we can think, nothing's really, I'm not seeing the needle move here. Nothing's really happening. I can't see anything's changing in my life. And it may be one of these practices where you chip away each little day, you do a little bit, and over time, suddenly there is a shift. You look back and, okay, you might not be able to draw lines from where this particular practice has shifted this particular thing in your life. But there may be, over time and over practice, that you have some kind of deep down, some kind of deep knowing that actually this has influenced you in a way, maybe influenced how you parent, maybe influenced the bond between you and your child. There's definitely scope for looking at motherhood as a sort of sacred heart practice. But yeah, from my perspective, motherhood my heart was very, very closed before motherhood. So from my perspective, it cracked my heart open. And there were times where, it was so vulnerable and things hurt, and I felt, numerous times kind of like my heart was literally cracking open, breaking open. It was painful, it was messy, it wasn't easy. But going forwards, I can see, as I can look back, that it was necessary. But as I said earlier, it is very, very difficult to kind of perceive that when you are in that survival mode, that mothering mode. So just knowing that as you are a new mother, and even its subsequent children, but as you are a mother with young children and babies, you are kind of going through this initiation in a way. It's like a transformation between who you were and who you are becoming. And what I like about heart coherence, amongst the many, many things, what I like about heart coherence and that kind of ritual is you can take that time in this moment of being cracked open to really embody that future self. As you go through this transformation, you're using practices, rituals like this to embody that future version of yourself into the now, into who you are right now. Because as the more we ignore the capitalist version of self-care and step back into our own sacred practices of self-care, the more we genuinely fill our cup, and you can, again, working with the Heart Centre, you feel the difference. You know the difference in your bones between genuine care for yourself and your well-being and the commercialised version that we've been sold, that we keep consuming, and somehow it never quite fills up that cup because it's not designed to. It's designed for us to keep consuming. So when you come from that place of real filling your cup, it fills up, and then it keeps filling, and then it starts to overflow and spill out. And then people around you are getting it because it's just going everywhere. It's like this massive, massive goblet full of water, and it's just flowing out everywhere. And eventually, you've moved out of this phase of having young children. You move out of that season. Suddenly, you filling up, it's overflowing. You can give it to other people. You can share, practices maybe that you do to fill you up with other mums and see if that helps them. It may or may not work for them, but you've got more to give. And you can't really give that to other people so much when you're in early motherhood because it's all going to the child or children. And that's okay. That's okay. You've got enough to fill your cup, and then whatever's spilling over can be going to your children. And in time, you move out of that season. And if you're still filling that cup, it can then start to go out into the wider world. So that to me is why motherhood is such like a sacred heart practice, because we are starting at the beginning. We are starting at the point of creation, which is within ourselves. So hopefully this has been useful to you. So yeah, if you want to join us and you want to step onto this Wild Rose path, then just join us and sign up for the journal, and we'd love to have you. And let me know as well if you have any of your own kind of practices that help you come back to your own heart. Because I think the more we kind of share those around with other mums and other women in the world, the more we can collectively rise that tide of all boats.